What is psychology? Where is it used? This course will teach you that psychology is the science of why and how people think and act the way they do. Therefore, psychology is essentially everywhere. Now, before we begin with the history, the background, and the different schools of psychology, let's begin by exploring where psychology exists in our social world to make psychology more accessible. Meet Dave Ortiz. What do you see? What impressions do you have of Dave? And what are you basing these impressions on? Dave is a biker who loves his Harley. I met a guy a couple years ago who rode Harleys and looked like Dave with tattoo sleeves on both arms, and he was in a biker gang. Maybe Dave is also in a biker gang. The perception of bikers is that they drink a lot at those biker bars, so Dave probably drinks a lot. And those bikers are not the smartest people in the world. They get in fights for many stupid reasons. Whenever you see TV shows or movies where they show an image of jail cells, you always see a biker guy behind bars. It's probably because they got into a fight with someone who accidentally bumped into them. Sons of Anarchy is about bikers who are outlaws, and the media depicts most bikers as outlaws. So maybe Dave is a tough outlaw who doesn't take crap from anybody. While we don't always go through such a verbal process of our perceptions of people, this naturally happens cognitively, which means in our heads. It is a natural instinct. The reality of Dave Ortiz goes against much of the impression we got of him at first glance. So allow me to introduce you to Dr. Dave Ortiz. Dr. Dave, which is what he likes to be called, is a graduate of Columbia University Medical Center. He is a doctor, more specifically a general practitioner who resides in New York City. Although most people see Dr. Dave as the Harley-riding guy whose arms and back are covered with tattoos, they fail to see who he really is. While he is armed with tattoos, Dr. Dave found a company called Fresh Start where he offers free tattoo removal services for people coming out of prison or leaving gangs. In addition to Fresh Start, he also started a healthcare co-op for restaurant workers who otherwise do not have medical insurance. So, what does Dr. Dave teach us about social psychology? If psychology is the science of how and why we think and act the way we do, Dr. Dave teaches us that psychology is in fact everywhere. How we form our impressions is based on the social perception we make about people and events of our social world. While we know that perception is not always the reality, social psychology tells us that our brains often interpret perception as reality. It takes 1/10 of a second to form an impression. That impression tells us whether we want to befriend someone or stay away from someone. 1/10 of a second comes from our perception of that person and not the reality of who they are. So how is it that impression formation can occur in 1/10 of a second? Social psychologists attribute this to our social schema. Schema is just a big word for understanding or knowledge. What we know and what we've learned is our schema. Social schema is how we understand our social environment based on our social experience. When I said I knew a guy who looked like Dave, that guy shaped my social schema of what people like him are like. He was in a biker gang, and because Dave reminded me of him, I used my social schema to deduce that Dave must therefore also be a member of a biker gang. Whenever we use information from what we already know and learned, even if it's wrong, the process of shaping our current mental representation and understanding is attributed to our social schema. We do this instinctively all the time. My 7th grade English teacher was the devil. Therefore, all English teachers must be the devil. I was told in the 4th grade that I wasn't a good reader. Therefore, I am not now, nor will I ever be a good reader. Just because it was true at one point does not mean it holds true forever. But social schema is at play when we base our understanding of the social world on events and experiences of the past. Why do your parents say, "You are not leaving this house looking like that"? Why do some schools have dress codes while others have uniforms? Why do so many people care about what you wear? How you dress, how you accessorize, how you talk, how you smell, ultimately how you present yourself to the world is a form of data. If it takes 1/10 of a second to form an impression, how you present yourself is the data you are giving people to make judgments and assumptions of you. How do you present yourself? What data are you presenting in that 1/10 of a second? We all know it's unfair to make judgments and assumptions of people before you really get to know them, but we also know this is how our brains operate. Why do you dress your best for an interview? Why do you dress a certain way for church? What is the data of your perception? Making judgments and assumptions lead to stereotypes. We all have stereotypes about how certain people are or aren't. Stereotypes shape our impression of people. Stereotypes are not limited to race or gender. Stereotyping on the basis of race, ethnicity, gender, age, disability, body weight, sexual orientation, or gender identity leads society and individuals to make inferences about people. While stereotypes are not all bad, we see the damaging effects of stereotypes. Social psychologists say that in order to get rid of stereotypes, we must first acknowledge our own stereotypes, then know and understand where the stereotypes come from. This allows us to recognize when stereotypes leads us to make unfair judgments in the future. The key is to acknowledge it and dispel it before it takes shape into a prejudice that shapes our attitude or opinion about a person or an entire group of people. Before you move on, think about your impression formation process. What do you use to make sense of your social world? What social schema did you use to understand Dave? What is the data of your perception? And what stereotypes do you have?